3, 2, 1.
Hey. This is Joe, and we're coming on Monday. Unlike last week, I think we were on Tuesday, so we're back on schedule. And I've got an incredible guest that I've been trying to get on this podcast now for a minute, and she's finally found the time. And if I told you all the stuff that this woman does, it'll make your life feel really, really tiny small. So currently right now, KC, yes. You are the acting director of Border Services Canada.
Canada Border Services Agency. You almost got that.
Oh, Canada Border.
Yeah. Yeah, it's in data governance and stewardship. Super exciting stuff.
Data governance. I'm not even going to ask what that means because I really don't care. Just kidding. I do. I want to know. And then you also run an NGO.
Yeah, so I'm in the process of, I mentored a former student of mine who beautifully put together this NGO in anti-human trafficking. And by mentoring, I mean, you've been in mentoring relationships. I sort of thought, yeah, that's going to be about like 3 phone calls over the course of a year. That wasn't how this worked with Terrell. She kept me right in the midst of it, sleeves rolled up. We were in it. And so we did this together, but she was really at the head of it. She is a born evangelist. So she's moving into that area. Sweet. And has asked if I would just take the entire anti-trafficking piece of it. And we can talk more about what we're doing.
I want to.
That's coming. That's sort of in the incubation stage right now.
Wow. And then also you've got some political background.
Yeah.
So you used to be a political strategist in the States.
Yep.
That was your other life.
Yep.
And currently you kind of moonlight.
Dabbling.
You dabble. Moonlighting, I think, is the term for it.
Better, yeah.
So you're still helping. I think we can't mention the name. Maybe I won't.
We can.
Oh, we can.
She's amazing.
I don't know.
It's probably your future prime minister, so we can talk about Toyin Crandall.
Okay, sweet.
Yeah. So I moonlight. I was going to say dabble again, but I moonlight, and I help out with some of her communications, and she's an amazing candidate. So I would rather just talk about her the whole time because she's amazing. But so she's running in Simcoe North.
Okay.
Yeah, Aurelia area.
Sweet. And then lastly, you're also working on a master's degree, which we won't talk about because that's a sensitive matter. But the point is, how do you do it all? Like, that's incredible. I have a hard time doing one thing.
Well, you also have kids.
Well, I have a wife too.
Yes, you do. I have neither.
Unlike James.
So
good one.
That's so bad.
So I have time. I'm pretty focused, and not everything happens all at once, right? It's just good scheduling.
And you're an avid book reader because...
You've seen it.
Oh, I've seen it. I got overwhelmed just looking at your list.
My trick to avid book reading, I'm tactile, so I like the turning of the pages and the touch and the feel of the book. But I had a concussion last December, and so I was, for about 6 months, I was in bad shape with my head, and reading was problematic. Audible. Audible.ca. Here's my plug for that. So I've been listening to audiobooks, and so... when I'm sweeping the floor, when I'm driving somewhere, taking the dogs for their walks, Audible going. So, yeah. That's
great advice because I'm what you call a chronic, I start books, I don't finish books.
No, I couldn't do that.
I get bored along the way.
Me too, but I have to finish them. I need closure. Even if the third page, this is a really bad book, I'm reading it all the way to the end. I will suffer.
Wow. Yeah. You're better person than I am.
Maybe
I just need some coaching and some mentoring. I'm reading right now a really great book, if I can remember. It's called Deep Work.
Okay.
And it's all about this idea and concept that in our culture today, we're all about surface level work. Mm-hmm. So we never really go deep. And so if we want to do meaningful work, we have to be able to pay attention for an extended period of time. Mm-hmm. So the writer does an incredible job in... The thesis of it is really is that if you can just learn to do deep work in one area, you can have incredible impact.
Nice.
So I'm trying to read it. I'm still, halfway there. Yeah. So enough about me. Let's talk about you because the reason I want to talk to you is you're one of those few people that I know that is multidisciplinary in the sense that you've done politics, you've done... you're rescuing people from sex trafficking. You are very cultured. You know what's going on. You know what's hip. Sometimes depends on the day. But where did all that curiosity to learn come from?
I think I've just always had it. I think it's just a personality thing. I've always been a reader since I was very little. My dad did that. He took me to the library all the time, public library, find some books, sit and read. When your parents model behavior, you pick it up. And both my parents are phenomenal readers. My mom is blind and she still reads.
Wow.
Like, she has macular degeneration, but she's reading. She's always learning. So I love my mom. I could talk about her all day too. So she is 84 years old. She is in great health. She walks every day. She takes care of her health. She and my dad live in a retirement home. She reads. She's a techno guru.
Wow.
Like, she can do technology like. It's unbelievable. But she has always been a big reader, and she's always learning, right? So she's postured herself in life to always be learning. You think that, when you hit a certain age, for some people it might be 50, some people it's 75, you kind of have arrived. You've learned pretty much what you're going to learn. My mom is still learning new things and trying new things. And so I think having that kind of a parent, you pick that up. Some of it's probably innate, just personality wise. Having my dad model that, who's very studious. He's way more responsible than I am, like very much more, like my parents are disciplined people. They follow the rules for the most part. Yeah. I'm a little bit outside of the box, so I have varied from them. I think I come by that pretty naturally from my biological family too. There's some characters all over. But yeah, I'm very curious all the time. And I think another thing that shaped me, honestly, was going to, here in Ottawa, we have Canterbury High School for Performing Arts, and I went up through the theater program, through drama. And, when you do improv, one of the things you learn about making a scene is no matter what suggestion someone throws at you, you say yes to it and you go for it. And my personality wasn't necessarily do that. I have some limits and some anxiety, but I think that has helped me overcome that kind of fault and hesitance that I would have, because someone shows up, you're spontaneously like, hey, let's do this. And okay, and away you go. Because if you say no, it shuts down the scene and it's all over, and you lose your audience and you lose your moment. And so I think I actually somehow have adopted that as a lifestyle. Wow. So, when someone says to me, hey, we're moving to Russia to work, with Russian Jewish population and do, spread the gospel and be missionaries, move with us to St. Petersburg. I said yes, and then a few months later, I'm 19 years old and I'm living in St. Petersburg, Russia, speaking maybe 10 words of Russian at the time. And that opened up my entire life by saying yes to something a little bit crazy, right? And that was with Youth with a Mission. And then, when you make decisions like that and you do something a little bit different from the regular path, it opens up more and more opportunity. And that's where the adventure happens, I think. And so I like adventure.
Wow. And that's big, in a sense that most people struggle with just, making that one decision, that one yes, that would allow them to get to wherever that big vision is. I think lots of people have that right now. They have big vision, but that ability to say yes.
Or a lot of people have they hesitate, or they doubt things, or they like comfort and the way things always are. Yeah. But just saying yes, like when video work, if somebody comes to me or a project that I've never done before, I say yes to it because I know I can figure it out and I can learn stuff. But then you get in a whole different environment and network, and it, like you said, it just opens up doors from that point, right?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I have rich friends, not monetary rich, although some of them might be, some of them are, but I have a rich network of friends and of all kinds. Like I have people who are top of their field in the world. In sciences, I know people who are average, mediocre, happily, suburban, having a good life with their family, and they're living their best Barhaven life, right? Doing their thing. Not for me, as you can tell. I mean that in all sincerity. Like for some people, like that's a really great life. Most of the world strives to get there, like, because that's their idea of opulence and security and peace. So I don't say that too. I do say it a little bit lightly, but you know what I mean. Like that, if that's what they want and that's their vision, that's amazing. Right. But I have I have people who are just struggling to survive in my friendship network, right? And it's amazing for me. So I think a lot of that is the saying yes and going for it. Now, there's an obverse side to that. Sometimes you say yes and you don't have the resources to pull off what you just agreed to do, right? And there's a cost. Like you have to leave your family. You put yourself in danger sometimes. You're misunderstood. It's alienating from other people. So when I was with Youth with a Mission, anytime I've been with an organization, when you go and have an experience, you travel, you do some sort of an outreach, or if you're in a military at all, or you're in that kind of like any kind of a program where you've got that fraternity and people who go through something together, it's hard for other people to understand that. And you develop your own language and lexicon and short form for things. You laugh at inside jokes that nobody else in the world is going to understand, right? And so there is a cost to sometimes going on some of these intense adventures, as I would like to call them, whether it's working in anti-human trafficking and taking a team that goes through grueling training and then goes in and does what they're supposed to do. Nobody else in the world can really understand what they've been through. And so it can be isolating. And I think I've met a lot of people too in my network who are like burned out missionaries or burned out outreach workers, and burned out in the sense that they've put everything in and are maybe not very well understood on the other side of it, right? And there's, if you're in a church and then you go do missions work, if you're not right inside that particular denomination or culture, it can be alienating when you come back because you have had a different experience that separated you away. Right. And sometimes people put you on a pedestal and say, wow, you're this amazing hero. And really you've been like...
Or sometimes you're the heretic when you come back.
Sometimes you are, yeah. And it's not as glamorous as, Mission Sunday makes it seem. And then there's other people who have like complete revolution spiritually in their own lives, and they understand that like what was okay before is not okay anymore. And they're unpacking their faith and they're questioning things. And it's very hard when you've been apart from family and friends in your community, in your own society, and you've had cross-cultural experience. All of a sudden you are kind of out there, and then you've got other people who are like that, but you're isolated together because you can relate on a certain high level, but not into the details. So that's a thing too. Like there's a cost to saying yes and to kind of following the dream, doing the big things. I'd say it's worth it. And I think there's also ways of doing it better rather than just sort of like taking the big reckless leap. Sometimes it's good to take a big reckless leap. Maybe it's easier when you're younger too and you have less to lose. Yeah. Or it feels like you're invincible. But things like family and things like that, you've got to really count the cost. Right now, if someone asked me to move to Nepal to do anti-trafficking work, 20-year-old me would say yes. 15-year-old me would say yes. 30-year-old me would say yes. Right now, like, no, my most important thing in my life is my parents. And they're here in Ottawa, and I will do everything to stay in touch and be here with them, because that's my big adventure right now, is my parents. So I can do, but I can work in around. I can do work in Nepal. I've got great organizational and leadership skills, and I've got the knowledge from my past too, and I can help someone else, like, push them off the cliff to go do that, and I can support them, right? I can train, I can go in and out of Nepal. I'm just using Nepal as kind of a almost random example. But I'm not going to just quit life and abandon it. So it's there's more nuance to my adventures now, and my priorities are kind of different than they were 20 years ago.
And I think the more you know, when you're 20 years old, you don't even know what you're saying yes to.
Yeah, it's kind of great.
It's just it's great, and you think you can change the world, and then you get some feedback that reality check, I guess, is the best way to describe it. And so your priorities start to change as you get older and older. And so I'm always actually impressed when somebody makes a decision to leave it all at a later age, because the costs, they know what they're losing. Yeah. I don't even know how people do it sometimes, just like even for me right now, I have, 3 little kids, a wife, I got my parents. For me to just like say, okay, kids, I'm going on a mission trip for an extended period of time, that would be a really difficult decision. Yeah. I would have to have an angel come, not only talk to me, but they would have to talk to my wife, my kids.
Definitely a Zoom call involved in the situation. Yeah, I get you.
So I totally get it. Let's get it on that, actually, because the reason what this podcast is called On the Edge of the Inside. Okay. And the purpose behind it is to talk to individuals that are really not on the outside, in the sense that they care about, whether they're about their faith or about the institutions. They're not looking to, destroy them.
Yeah, okay.
which I think sometimes you do want to. Yeah. And I totally understand the impulse from individuals that are just tear it all down. And it's just like, okay, well, then what?
That's usually where it starts from, right? Because you kind of wake up, like you said, you go and have different experiences and experience different cultures, and sometimes you see the flaws in the way your programming or the things around you have been set in place. And then the first reaction is burn it down, right? But then you start to realize that that's not the most best way to go about things, right? So I'm hearing my feedback for myself.
Yeah. And that's really good insight. So someone like you who's been on the inside and then been on the outside and having to come back, and also, as you just mentioned, you have relationships with a lot of people, and you've introduced me some incredible people that have done this kind of work, and they're having a hard time really assimilating and don't want to assimilate. And don't want to anymore anyways. And out of that, they're actually reimagining their faith. And sometimes it looks like they're heretics and they're on the edge. Yeah. But speak to that. Like, how do you, like,
what kind of heretic am I?
No, okay. Are you, let's put it on a scale of 1 to 10. We're going to behead you.
Sorry, Joe. I couldn't help myself. What was your question? Oh, you want me to tell you what kind of heretic they are, not me, right?
Yeah. Let's talk about them. It's much easier than to talk about you. Because you're not, heresy is just, again, it's in the eye of the beholder sometimes.
The eye of the beholder, I like that.
It is sometimes, I think when an idea threatens your way of life or the way you've always imagined something to be, then it's easier to just disqualify by saying this guy's a heretic and this girl's a heretic.
Cognitive dissonance.
Right? Yeah, because you don't want to have to confront it. But I think that's something that you and I have had conversation about is even within the Big C church, there's a way that we do church and the way we kind of imagine the world. But then the reality of what you've experienced, specifically, let's talk about sex trafficking and doing that kind of work. What have you really discovered, when you're on that edge of the inside and doing the work that you're doing and then having to come back to the Christian community or to your community, and how have you kind of navigated through that?
Well, one of the ways I've navigated is not coming back to church. So it's been a lot of years since I've been there. And of course, I grew up in the church, like in a Pentecostal Assemblies of Canada, in the Vineyard. When I was in the United States, Assembly of God. And that's a whole other conversation, right? In a community church. So, and I have always been very church-oriented, community-oriented. For an introvert, very oriented towards that. And I love the best of it. I love really getting to know people. I love it when you hit the point where you see each other's dirty laundry and you're still having a relationship. And you get past that phase and then you're good again. Like, there's something that I love about teams and group dynamics and the community of church. I've tried to find replacements for it, for the parts that I really miss, that I love. Soccer. So I'm still playing soccer. Well, I will be when we are allowed to do that again. I get injured more often and it keeps me out longer because I'm getting old, but still there is a certain kind of community in my club, right? And in the different clubs I've been part of, but not to the same degree as what I've had in the church or in my circles, my like circles of believers and everything. I have had authentic relationship with people outside of the church. And that was like amazing discovery for me, decades ago, right? That there are people that are great and they're authentic and they're amazing and they can be real and vulnerable and I can have quality relationships with them without having an agenda. And so I'm very fortunate I learned that early on. But coming back around, I haven't found a replacement for some of the best parts of it. And having a worldwide network of friends, it's very difficult to have the intimacy of community, the day in, day out. So I do miss those parts. I guess my objective has been to not throw out baby Jesus with the bathwater.
Great picture.
Can I say that?
Yes, you can.
It came out a little weird, but you know what I mean, right?
Yes.
So I'm a person of really strong faith and stronger than it's ever been, I think. But I think a lot of people I know now would be quite surprised because it's not I don't bulldoze into a room wearing that on the front. It's something I share as part of who I am with people once I get into a good conversation with them, a very sort of different approach from others. And I also get like fingernail on the chalkboard feeling when I hear people doing what I would consider this old style evangelism and just hammering it at people and that sort of thing. Like, I guess I figured that if if I can grasp a few of the things that Jesus said, like even one of them, and do it in my life, if once I've mastered like loving other people, then I can move on to all the other things. The beauty is I'll never master that, right? So if I just do that, and so, but I mean, what does loving someone look like, right? Is it accepting them even though they do things that I find abhorrent? Is that loving? For me, when I look at the human trafficking issue, it perplexes me. It keeps me up at night. Do I love Johns? Do I love the people who are trafficking? Like, can I sit down and have a conversation with someone who thinks it's okay to buy and sell a human being for labor or for sex, who will take a child away? Can I love a person who will sell their child into slavery to feed their other kids, or because they're so strung out on drugs or alcohol or been brainwashed in some way to think that there's no value in their child? So it takes on a whole different thing. Can I love someone who judges me so harshly because I don't fit the mold of, or I've strayed, or I don't look like the kind of Christian that they think I should look like? So it's a lot. And for me, my faith and the questions I have now are just as many as when I was a little kid and was curious. And I haven't got it all figured out. The way I look at my faith journey, my personal faith journey, is like, I guess, having a car and taking it all apart and laying it all out, and realizing there's probably some extra pieces here I never really needed and I haven't used. So I'm just going to put those aside. And there's probably some pieces I don't have to make this all fit back together again, but I haven't gotten to that point of putting it all back together to make it run. So I've been for years, I've been examining the pieces, and I've tossed out a few things. And then I realized, I'm missing some things that I would really like to add back in. So I'm looking for those.
Wow. The stage that you're speaking of is deconstructing your faith.
Yeah, I didn't realize that there's a whole thing about that.
I know.
I thought I was over here by myself.
No, you thought you were original.
It's like a movement.
The movement. There's a whole bunch of people deconstructing.
I didn't know that I was in sync with like.
I think it just happens.
Yeah.
I think, there might be some people who are doing it as sort of like a movement thing, but like, because that sounds very similar to what happened to me, right? Just gung-ho when I first found God. I was like 21 or 22, and then it's just beating everybody over the head with the Bible at that point, right? It's just preaching, doing all that stuff. Like you said, it's almost cringy now to see that from somebody else's perspective, because we came from that. And now, like you said, exactly what you said, the most important thing is to love people. But finding that balance of what is love is one of the trickiest parts, right? Because they're doing things that you don't agree with, or that are detrimental to other people. And it's, how do I still override like anger or something like that to be able to love them, but still communicate the proper message and maybe make things clear to them? But again, it's a tough balance to find that, right? To be able to love and without, because you don't, like the way I used to be was, you always have to convince people what they're doing is wrong and you need to change and you need Jesus. But then when somebody's blatantly doing something wrong, you almost don't want to go back to that, telling them you're wrong. It's such a, like Jesus said, the narrow path, right? It's hard to find that narrow path.
And I mean, not swinging the pendulum to the other kind of judgment, right? So, I mean, for instance, you growing up, you think, okay, girls should dress modestly, young women, all women should dress modestly. And then, you get a situation where you hear in the news someone got raped, and you'll hear people in the church say, well, if she wasn't dressed like that, or she was partying, well, she made herself vulnerable, or she was in sin and made herself vulnerable. She wasn't honoring her parents. If I can be very blunt here, a woman, a girl doesn't go out wearing like booty shorts and hardly any clothes because she wants to attract a rape.
Right.
She doesn't do that.
Right.
She might go out doing that and kind of, I would call, disrespecting herself in some ways, because she is crying out for love.
Right. There's an underlying issue.
And there's attention that she wants, and she deserves that. She absolutely deserves attention and love and care.
Right.
She just may not know how to go about and get it. And I have no problem. People can wear whatever they want or be naked. It doesn't really bother me at all. Except for in our weather. Like I highly encourage clothing. But I think we have to stop. We can't. I think most of us have learned. We're not judging. We're not blaming the victim. We're not judging someone and saying that they're the one who brought it on themselves. We're past that. We know better. But the other side of the swing of the judgment is those jerks that are judging her, right? And so we can turn around and look at those people who are so rigid, and they're not as enlightened as we are. They're not as with it as we are. They're not woke to the deconstruction movement and The New Testament.
Yeah, the New Testament.
They're not there yet.
No.
So, but we are really hard on those folks that are us a few years back, not that long ago. And even a previous generation in history, that's not that long ago, right? And so really we've had a massive mind change and culture change and thinking and human rights change. It's not fast enough. We talk about racism, we talk about women's rights, we talk about equality. We're not even close to there yet, but we're way further than we were 10, 20, 30, 40 years, our parents' generation.
Yeah.
That was a whole different, it's been rapid change as history goes.
Yeah,
just not fast enough for us, right?
No.
So anyways, I'm all over the map
here. No, this
is
so good. No,
but I think it's really important for me. I've gone from that place of like, let's burn it all down, as we were talking about before, and having my blowtorch ready. And I think there are some things that probably could do with being burnt down and start over. Yeah. But but I think we have to be loving and compassionate towards people who haven't left the bubble yet and who haven't gotten to the place we are. If someone hadn't told me, I would still be that person, right? If I hadn't had life knock me around a little bit, I would still be in that bubble, and that's just reality, right? So we just I think we have to be.
So what caused it though? What caused you talk about life hitting you? So at what point did you have that moment where you're like, okay, how I'm living out this faith is not really in sync with either who you are or what you're experiencing? Because obviously that's why you're such a great person to talk to, because you've been in the quote unquote four walls of the church.
I pastored in those walls.
I mean, you and I've seen you. I mean, you're like, prayer warrior. You've done it all. Like, and yet also at the same time, you were outside of the, whether it's in work environment or the NGO work that you've done. And so at what point did you have this realization where you're like, this is not fitting?
Yeah, I don't know if there's maybe a couple of aha moments for me where like big things happened that knocked me, like that send you back to saying, okay, I need to re-examine what I believe about God. So I mean, one of the biggest early blows was I was assaulted when I was younger. And it was like, well, if I was guarding myself in certain ways, why wasn't God guarding me too? If I value that for myself, why isn't that as important to God? And one of the things that I had to reconcile for decades was that I was looking at that from what had been taught in the church and what I taught about modesty and about like all of these things, and really it didn't really line up with who God is. And, and I survived. Here I am. I have a great life, right? I think another thing, a few other disappointments in life happened. You know this well. I wanted to have children so badly. And then a few years back, it's getting to be quite a while now. 7 years ago, I was diagnosed with uterine cancer. And I lost my marriage at that time. And I went through treatment to try and preserve my uterus. And we had so many people like praying and contending with me and believing for me. And I've been fighting like infertility for years before that. And every time someone in the church or that I knew was announced a pregnancy and had a shower, I was there with like as much as I could afford, good gifts. Like I went and did that. And then I bought something. I don't know if you know this, but I bought something for my future child. Wow. So I had a nursery set up. I had a theme. I had like the state of the art, everything. The stroller that cornered really well. I was married to an engineer, so we were checking that out, right? Cribs, clothing, entire, like a very, very dapper little wardrobe for a child. And so, but I was my act of faith, right? And so I fully believed I was going to be a mother, naturally give birth to children. I wanted like 18 boys and 2 girls. And then as I got older, I was like, okay, 5 kids will be fine. Yeah. I'll settle for 5, cut the dream back. Yeah. But then when that happened, it threatened my dream. My whole life dream was motherhood, and it threatened it. And so marriage lost, and then my uterus was threatened. And so I refused to get surgery. I went and took this experimental treatment. Then even my oncologist was like, this is pretty risky. So like every 6 to 8 weeks, you're going to have to get a biopsy. And if this treatment's working, okay. And it did. It was amazing. It was like a miracle. There's my miracle. And then 10 months in, I got a call from my oncologist and said, your cancer is 10% of the original size. This is working so well. And the treatment cleared up your fertility issue, which was unrelated.
Wow.
Go ahead, start IVF. And I'm like, lost my marriage. I'm not married anymore, right? So I'm not going to start at this point.
Like a little earlier.
Yeah, if only. And so, but then, I mean, a couple weeks later, they found a second cancer, which is called clear cell carcinoma, which is deadly. It hits you and it spreads like wildfire. And I would have died if I didn't get surgery. Like it's pretty serious stuff. So about 10 days later, I have a full hysterectomy. That killed the dream. You know, and I was still believing up until the time I was rolled outside the OR. I was like, I believed that I could have a brand new uterus and the cancer could be gone and I could have this dream. I lost the dream. It died. Right. So I think a disappointment like that and saying, okay, God, my entire life has been geared around this, like, go have the big adventures first, then settle down and make a home work for the government. I never wanted to work for the government of Canada. Like, I like being out on my own. I like taking risk. I like running a business. I like the adrenaline of it. But for the sake of my future children, I decided maternity leave and pension is a good thing. And so I worked for Canada Revenue Agency. Like that became the dream because that was for children. I bought this big, beautiful house in Wakefield. You've seen the house. You've been in the house.
Amazing. Yeah.
That wasn't for one person. That's a family house with a yard and a tree house. Like that was for kids. I lost all of it.
Wow.
So I think that's when you go back in your faith too and say, okay, now what? You know, when you have faith and your faith is like, you get a no, and it wasn't a no from God, just life. Like this happened and you can't blame anyone. It's just how it happened. In fact, I'm very grateful. I know it's a sensitive subject for people to talk about losing a marriage, but that saved my life. If I hadn't have had a miscarriage, if I hadn't have had fertility issues, which I would never discovered if I wasn't married, hadn't gone through that, I would have had these symptoms. I would have been dead by now.
Wow.
Because so that, like, for the loss, it saved my life. So I have no resentment about that. Right. But I do go back and say, okay, this was my life dream. And you can't just like find a replacement. Right. Like, oh, my car broke down, so I'll go get another one. Which car would I like? You can't do that with a dream when it's part of your identity and what you're going for in life. So what happens when the dream dies? There's a book title. Yeah. Life Got after the dream dies. And so I had to really go back and look at my faith and say, I've everything, the prophetic words, people were not just like general, like, oh, I see children in your future, like fortune telling. There were some really specific ones in several different countries from other people. It would make a believer out of a non-believer to hear some of like these prophetic words or things people spoke to me or things they wrote in a letter. Oh, I had a dream that you had 5 kids, and someone else said, I had this dream that you had 5 kids all within a month. Right. And so you start, it all starts coming together over, maybe 10, 15 years I got those. So then you're like, well, what was all about? Should they be stoned? Were they false prophets? What do we do with this? I just still don't get it. But there is something I had to go back and say, okay, this knocked me. And now I need to go back and question, what was I hearing God? Is God real? Did I make this up? Like how far did I let myself believe this was a thing? And then sometimes you're like, don't overthink it. Just live your life. I got bonus years. I could have been dead. I'm not. Let's do something productive with this time. I know I'm in the envy of some of my friends. I'll call their the kids hanging off of them and stealing their snacks and finding their secret Nutella stash in the back of the cupboard and tearing their clothes and, basically stealing their sanity. Oh, wait, you have 3 kids. You know this story.
You know what? You were just giving me a little bit of
flashback.
PTSD or something. And I was like, stop it.
But, my friend Mel, Mel, and, I could say I'm jealous of her life. She's living in this beautiful town. She's got these 3 incredible children that I love so much. They've stayed in my house before. I visit them when I can. And so I do have a certain kind of healthy envy of that. Like I'm very happy for that she has that life, but I'm also the envy of a lot of my friends that have, 3 to 8 kids at home, and they're like, you went to what country? You're going where on vacation? Yeah. Oh, you've got a leather couch. Nice. Nice that you can have nice things. I do have an enviable life. I have an amazing career. I have an exit plan out of government. Not people with kids can't do that without a big risk, right? I do have a way back to doing NGO work. In a way that I can support myself financially, unlike the first time around. Dear Lord, where will this week's bread come from? Not this week? Okay, well, maybe next week. Right. But now I have a way of doing that and financially supporting myself and actually having a sober estimation of how I can change the world. Showing up with a backpack and no skills in another country is not a good way to change the world. Something good could come out of it. Yeah. But also knowing who you are, what your skills are, how you can lead, what you have to offer, and putting those in the right places and joining with other people who are smarter, have different skill sets, and working together and collaborating. I think that's how we change the world when when we're a bit older and wiser. So
yeah, if I can touch on that, like what you're talking about, when you really believe God is supposed to do, like he's going to do something in your life, like you having children, right? Like you really believe that God was telling you that. And that's similar to my marriage thing, right? So I was married, and I held so strongly onto the idea that God wants a marriage together, right? He doesn't want divorce. He doesn't believe in, Jesus said, what God has joined as one, let no man separate. And I have 2 kids, and I just felt so strongly that like no matter what happened, that this is what God wanted. But things just kept getting worse and worse, right? But I said, I just held on to what I would consider was faith, right? Yeah. Because I'm like, this is what God wants. I'm following God's will. And then I don't remember what, I think God just put me on somebody on this YouTube guy or whatever. And it really spoke to me. And I mean, I was already kind of ready for that, because you're not going to, if you put something in front of you and you're not ready to hear that, it's not going to matter. Right. Yeah. So I was kind of already at that point, and it was almost like confirmation. But again, it makes you re-examine things and what you thought God was, or what you thought, like who you thought he was, and everything about it. Right. And that, you know, for me, it was my own mistakes because I didn't follow God in the first place. And I was trying to fix something that he didn't ordain in my life in the first place, right? And that's what I'm starting to understand, is that there's like these rules set in place that I wasn't following. And that's why things were never going to work out for me the way they did. But it made me rethink everything that I was so grounded, that I found my identity in, right? Like I found my identity as this husband who, you know, I was even picturing the day that, you know, my ex-wife was like gonna thank me for holding on for so long and stuff. You know what I mean? Like I was living that, and I was like, I pictured that as my identity, you know? And now, and to go to your point, like with being the envy of not having children to some of your friends, I've learned in life that you have to be happy with whatever you have, because there's people that wish they have kids. There's people that wish they didn't have kids. There's people that wish they had curly hair. There's people that wish they had straight hair. And it's like that with everybody. You know what I mean? Like every single aspect of life is like that. And so it's just a matter of realizing what God has given you and what your short life that we have on this earth, because there is an afterlife, you know, but what does God want me to do here, right? Let his will be done and not my will, you know?
Exactly. So I think sometimes these big blows in life, they test our faith, right? Hey, wait, it sounds like that was written somewhere. Is that in the Bible?
I think so.
You know, yeah. It's like the testing where faith develops perseverance, and perseverance must finish its work, so we may be mature and complete and not lacking anything. I did memorize books of the Bible as a kid. That's it of James. James, your namesake. James, you know, consider it pure joy, my brothers, whenever you face trials of many kinds. And I've had, it's mine too. And I've had trials of many kinds. But I think it's not only the big knocks in life. I think maybe I'm not that stubborn that's the only way I learn. I think I've also listened to people. I mean, you asked earlier, what has caused me to re-examine it. A good friend of mine, someone else you know from a long time ago, who I haven't talked to in ages, Nicole LaFrance.
Yes.
So she was really instrumental in, well, she did this. She made a connection with some folks in the Dominican Republic, and a community leader there who was like the mayor of a little slum place on a sugar plantation, and he was like the pastor, community leader, everything, doing amazing things. But she created this relationship and created like a partnership between his community and then her network of people, and helping support teachers and get some education in there and do some other very practical things. And I know that she was interviewed in one of the Christian magazines. I've never subscribed to one, so I don't know, but it might have been like Charisma or something like that. Yeah. And in the same issue, I think a different article is what really woke me up, and I still refer to this. I'd love to get a copy of it. I'll have to see if I can get one. But it was a true story about a group of North American church missionaries who went to Africa. I don't know which country. It'll be in the article, but I can't remember. And they did the whole thing, like, you know, bake sales, car washes, matching t-shirts. Do not get me started on matching t-shirts. If there's anybody who's watching this or listening to this that has ever taken any anti-human trafficking training with me, they know that I could talk for an hour and a half every day about the matching t-shirts. Like, I will not do that ever in my life. And even as a joke, if someone gets me a matching t-shirt, I'm not wearing it. It's the biggest embarrassment on the planet. Maybe if I need to be humbled. matching T-shirts. Like
matching T-shirts.
Like you mean like everybody has like this for the organization?
Like
example.
Jesus loves you, except it's in Russian and it's spelt wrong. I've seen that. I was dying as the host to see. Bog lubit тебя, except it's spelt incorrectly, and you're just like, it's like saying Glob loves you, right? Like, can you imagine walking around with a group of people from another country who have a T-shirt with a big smiley face that says Glob loves you?
What religion is this? It's like an alien or something, right?
Even if it's spelled correctly, like, you know, you see these groups that are handing out bags of rice. If you accept Jesus, do you know how many times people have accepted Jesus Christ as their personal Lord and Savior for that bag of rice? Wow. It's like, they know the game.
Yeah.
It's not the way we don't do that. Don't do it. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Shiver. It's shudder worthy. Yeah. But in this article, so this group did the whole thing. Like they prayed, they did all the preparation, probably missions committee support, the whole thing, and all of the sanctioned ways of raising their funds. And, you know, what's a flight to Africa? Any part of Africa?
$2,000.
2,000 or up, right?
Yeah.
And so they each did this. I don't know how big the team was, but, you know, a fair number of them. They arrive in a community and they want to be put to work. They didn't arrange this ahead of time. I'm laughing, but it's not even funny. It is. It's hilarious. We can laugh at ourselves because we were that person.
Yeah, we were all there.
We put $1 in the offering plate for those people, right?
Yeah.
We have had our car washed. Let's just call it a car wash. But we have donated to these things if we haven't gone ourselves. Some of us have gone. I've gone. It's so embarrassing. I'm embarrassed. I'm red. I'm embarrassed. But so they go to this community like, okay, we're here to serve you, and you know, in the name of the Lord, kind of thing. And, no, thanks.
All in the name of Jesus, right?
But, and they got a no thank you from whichever town councilor or whatever.
Wow.
No, you don't understand. So you have the leaders who are like pleading, like, no, put us to work. We're here to serve you. I'm like, no, nothing for you to do.
Right.
And so like, if, you know, I can imagine the tension as like an outreach leader before. I can imagine like the panic that must be setting in for these leaders. Like, and they're crying out to God too.
Right.
And so finally these, the community leaders relented. They said, okay, well, we do have something just like a labor project that you can do. Great. Yes, absolutely. We'll do anything, like paint, thing, whatever. So they sent them to this building in the community and they asked them just to tear it down for the scraps. Perfect. So they went at it. And then partway into this, they asked, well, why do you need to tear this building down? Well, a group of Christian missionaries came and built us a community center. And we didn't want one, and so you're taking it apart.
God was humbling them, eh?
It's like like, this is a thing that happened, and I'm sure that's not the only time that's happened. Yeah. But it illustrates exactly the big waste that we have, and it's not just Christian mission organizations, although we're probably the worst in the West, in global North for doing this sort of thing. Right. But you know, secular organizations do this, intergovernmental organizations do this, the UN does this, like. The blame can go all the way around, but it's this horrible practices in you can call it community development or railroading over people's cultures and communities. There's all kinds of examples, and I do go over this when I train people, like when helping hurts, right, and when you're doing more harm than good. So I think we have to check ourselves and be a bit more humble and partner rather than go in and try and like ram the gospel down someone's throat or ram our free labor. Like if you'd taken like how much, like let's say that cost them like $15,000 for their trip. Right. Like how much more good would that do in buying mosquito nets, which is one of the best investments for quality of life is considered buying mosquito nets. And you know, there's other ways of investing money and investing in microloans or finding someone on the front lines and who's doing really good work, and you can do your due diligence and check them out. Like give your plane fare to them, don't go. You know, so but then sometimes we need to go. So it's a tricky thing. But I think sometimes just reading an article in a magazine or listening to someone's story and saying, "Wow, I'm embarrassed. I've been wearing matching T-shirts too," and I think sometimes that's enough to jolt us into saying, I need to re-examine how we've been going about doing this. And is this really an expression of faith, or is this ego, or is this, are we?
I think a lot of it is ego. I think because you always hear the stories. I think it's like a history, right, where the white man or the Western guy comes over and just takes over, like in a different culture where these guys were doing fine. Like they were living, they were like there's some of them that are obviously need some help, but they were already good. And then they come over and try to implement the Western ways. Like this is how you're supposed to do things.
Yeah, there's a word for that. It's called colonialism. colonialism.
That's it. That's
And
it,
this
right?
is like the new colonialism. It is a
Right.
form of it, and I abhor it. You know, I look at things as having an economist background. So I look at human trafficking, and I think I have a real problem with going and helping, to be honest with you. And I'm not even certain that we should be doing foreign
Explain
aid.
that. This would be good.
Okay.
Go for it. This is good. This is why you're here.
So which brand of heretic did we say I was? Not
The best
only
kind.
the best kind.
That's kind.
You know, I'm studying international development, and I might be saying maybe we shouldn't be doing aid in this way, and I do look at that. But in the human trafficking instance, so basic economics 101, supply and demand, right? So if I go into a situation and I'm able to get a child out of a sex trafficking situation, of course we want to do that, right?
Of course.
There's nobody on the planet who would say it's good for them. Even the people profiting know this is vile.
Right.
Having any person, but let's use a child because there's no choice here. There's no agency. This is a child. They're being used for sex.
Right.
We want them out of the situation safe. We want them to have therapy. We want them to have education, care, safety. So we go and we do that because obviously we get a child out if we can. But that's the supply side we've dealt with. But if the demand side, if someone who's using a child for sex isn't stopped and the demand is still there, the supplier is going to go and get another child and put them into that position. The supply is going to become the supply, the product,
Right.
because the demand side continues. And so as long as someone can make a profit from it,
Right.
and the risk of doing business is relatively low, right? They're not going to be jailed or caught or whatever, or not the people who are really making money, then they're going to, bring someone else in. So child A is safe. Child B is going around living their life in their happy neighborhood, but then they get sucked into trafficking, and now they've been sexually exploited. And by taking one child out, I've now doubled the number of children who have been exposed to sexual
Experience that they
violence.
have, right?
Wow.
Yeah.
So can I live with myself
Wow.
for continuing to take children out? Every time I take one out, there's going to be another one that goes in unless that supply side is dealt with.
Right.
And that means the people who are doing the selling and the people who are doing the exploitation and the Johns, unless that's stopped and the cost of them doing what they do is so high,
Right.
that slows down and stops demand,
Yeah.
then people are going to continually be exploited. So that's when I get into this ethical dilemma of, is my helping hurting? Am I actually inadvertently exposing another child? I can overthink this, and it was hard for me to think about this. What wasn't enough to stop me,
Yeah.
but I will continue to ask that question and to bring it up for us to ask ourselves the question, like, and that's a very extreme case, but it's very real.
Yeah.
And what other things do we do where we're rescuing? I hate that word, but we're getting people out of a bad situation, but that bad situation is a vacuum that's going to suck somebody else into it. So what are we doing about that bad situation?
Can I
So
ask why you don't like the word rescuing?
Because it's pejorative, I think, and really we're not. I don't know. I think it's because of this kind of Western hero complex.
That's
that
what I
we
was
get.
thinking. Okay, that's what I
Yeah,
thought.
and really, and it also strips away agency from the people involved, right? So yeah, I guess you could call it rescue, but I just don't
No,
like
I
the
understand
term.
what you're
Yeah.
saying. Yeah, okay,
But
cool.
if we're doing some kind of intervention,
Yeah.
to get somebody out of that situation or help them get out
Yeah.
of the situation, it's a real problem. This is a big global problem. We're not going to solve it in a podcast.
Of course.
But I think about it every day, and I talk about it every time I can, because I've got to figure out how to address the supply side. I mean, it's a culture change. It's an international governance change. It's
Just get a bunch of guns and a bunch of people, or no?
there are some people who do that. You talk to some ex-Navy SEALs, and I have a
Right.
good friend of mine who is she went from being a church secretary
Right.
who worked on the missions
To
department.
ramble.
No, she's in the Las Vegas Police Department.
Wow.
And she wants to get into a vice squad to deal with this. And I met her when I was in Cambodia, and she was literally the church secretary that did that. And this sweetheart. And
Right.
rumor is that she wears like a pink tutu to the shooting range. She's like a spit of a thing, but she is like, don't mess with her.
Right.
So
Yeah,
she-
I'll go anywhere in the world with her, and I'll feel safe.
Right,
'Cause
right.
she'll kick your
That's
butt.
crazy.
But it's there has to be the people that go in and deal with the demand side.
Right.
So I don't know the answers to it.
Well, and I think this is really good. I have a friend of mine who he's done some work with him, and he does work with True North Aid.
Yep.
And that's a conversation. No, it's Ken Smith, and he's the director of it. And one of the issues that he's had is, I don't want to be just that guy who's raising money, telling the people, look, the kind of impact that we've had, so that we can raise more money. No, I want to have real transformative impact.
Yeah.
But to do that, and this is, I think, the question that you're posing here is, it's messy, it's hard, it's not attractive.
No.
Like to change, to actually go into an environment. I think it was the late, who's the lead singer for, he did a lot of indigenous work, died. Downey Jr. there.
Gord
Downey Jr. I called it.
You're kind of mixing your celebrities.
Too many celebrities in my brain. Gord Downey. Yeah. But he said, to change the problem with, for the indigenous community, he said it was going to take 4 or 5 generations. I think it was 80 years or 70 years. Yeah. It's long term.
Yeah.
And
you can't go in with a solution. You've got to go in with your ears open, and you have to be humble and listen.
Listen to them, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. The solutions are often there. I fully believe that any group of people, whether it's a community or a team or whatever, they have everything, every resource and everything within that group that they need for whatever they have ahead of them. And so, we're resourceful, right? And I think we have to go in and listen. And that's one of the things I really admire about my director from Youth with a Mission, Yari Koivu and his wife, Tanya Koivu. They went into Russia, and instead of just plowing in there, and I mean, this guy did incredible work behind the Iron Curtain. He's a legend, right? And you could have 10 podcasts with him.
Yeah, I gotta have one. I missed it. Last one, I missed it.
You gotta talk to him.
I gotta get him.
But they've done amazing things. But he didn't, even though he had all this knowledge and could have gone in and set up an empire, his whole the whole direction that we had for the first year is to go in and listen. And go in and find out what's going on. Listen to other pastors. Listen to the community. We had people in the home and they were doing the work and everything, but it was really about being humble and listening and waiting. And that's hard to do. And we're not quick to support people with our money to do that kind of thing too, right? What grant application are you going to write that says phase 1? We're just going to go hang out for a year. We're going to listen. We're going to wait on the Lord for a year. We're going to listen to the people. That is not a sexy funding proposal. Right. But I think it's important to go, and I think there's a growing understanding that you need to go and listen and find out who's doing that and identify local leaders, listen to what they have to say. And if you can play an enabling function and kind of come in and support what they're doing rather than bulldoze through their culture, sometimes there is a chasm and there's an obvious need, and you can kind of come in and help pull that together.
Well systems or something, if people don't have clean water
or
whatever, right?
Sure.
Yeah.
But are you doing that in conjunction with the people that are there who will be maintaining it and using it and and understanding that? I think we're getting there more and more with our understanding, but it's not often done. The big money players in international development aren't still not there yet.
Is that because it's selfish in the sense that they've got these big massive machines that require a whole lot of resources? They've got employees.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's part of it. The big development in the country, aid programs and things like that, they have program officers who aren't necessarily the most knowledgeable and skilled, and some of them are. I mean, I know some that have worked internationally from in Canada from global affairs, and what they see and what they do is really valuable, and they're able to direct resources. But still, it's a big machine. It's a lot of bureaucracy, and also we really tightly control the money, as we should have accountability. It's a balance, right?
Yeah.
Between, you don't want to just throw money away. You want it to be invested in a way, but then you can't have such tight controls on it that it's not movable, and someone can't really apply it in a way that works. So that's a big issue as well. But so I think regular Joe people who want to go out and help, I'm not saying nobody should ever go anywhere again, but let's be real. If you're going to go on a trip and be a tourist, just be a tourist. Don't be a vacationary.
With a whole bunch of Bible tracts or something, right?
Yeah, let's not raise your own money. Get an extra job.
Right.
If you have people who want to partner with you and invest in that, by all means, if that's the model, but let's rethink that model and how we do that. And, maybe partner with people who have really good, vision for sitting and listening and doing that stuff. Maybe that's what those are questions we should be asking at Mission Sunday. How are you being responsive to the local people? How much listening have you done? And that's where I'm going to put my money, and I actually do. My money is where my mouth is. I support on a regular basis, people who are doing things in a way that I consider to be ethical, responsible. And I've learned as the time's gone on, like how that looks. I've done stuff like I've been the matching t-shirt person.
Well, you clearly thought about it, because, like, you know, the whole thing with saving a child, but that's making two children have an experience instead of just one child having experience. Like, that's something deep to think about. That really rocked me, you know. And I'm like, you never think about that. You think, oh, I just saved a child.
Yeah.
But now two children have an experience that neither one of them should have had, instead of just one, right?
Yeah. But if you try and fix that system and ignore getting the kid out,
right?
Like, how long is it going to change? You know, how do we stop men mostly?
Right. Yeah.
99.9%. How do we stop men from sexually exploiting women and children?
Right.
Look, okay, let's solve that, and then we go get the kid. No, well, that's not, like, we got the kid out, tough. Right?
Yeah,
like, we've got to do, and we do preventative things in a community. It's not as black and white as that.
Right.
Like, there are things that we can do. We can, you know, as communities, we can watch each other's kids, whatever country we're in, where there's a crack in that, where there needs to be support. Maybe we can come in and provide support so that people can watch their kids. And why are they selling their kid? Is it because they're hungry? Well, there's no excuse for hunger in our world right now. There's none. So, you know, we look at those kinds of things. So there's things we can do. I think we just have to be responsible about it and go at it in a way that's ethical, and constantly ask ourselves the question, because we're going to find out, like, we can probably, like, in a year from now, go back and everything I've just said, say, okay, that was way off. But we have to be able to examine that and be humble enough to say, you know, I might be destructive. In what ways might this be destructive? But let's still move forward. So it is possible to overthink it, and it's very possible to underthink it.
Right.
And we just have to be careful. Like, I want to help people. And I don't have no ulterior motive. Like, I'm not going to get a kid out in hopes that they're going to become a great Christian.
Right.
I'm going to get them out because it's disgusting. Right. And
Absolutely,
same thing with anyone else. They're hungry. I'm going to feed them because they're hungry.
Because nobody should go hungry.
I don't care about the rest. Yeah. Like, you know, God could figure out the rest.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to deny, like, if they ask, like, who is my personal Lord and Savior? I'm not going to, like, obfuscate. Like, I just messed up that word, but I'm not going to, like, hide it.
Right.
They're probably not going to ask me that, Joe. Right. Or why are you feeding me? Like, whatever. Like, because you're hungry. Like, I think that's enough. Again, I don't want to throw baby Jesus out with the bathwater here. Right. Yeah. But living out my faith is more important than talking about it. Yeah. And I'm still trying to get a handle on how to do that, but I'm not going to get it right in my head before I start trying.
Yeah, but they say I'm willing to make the mistakes. Love, right? Yeah. And what is love? Love is feeding people. It's not trying to convince people of some things, right? Yeah. But it again, like Jesus said, only who God calls to me is who are his sheep, right? So you can go and do good things, and then if people ask questions or if they come to you, that's a whole different story. It's not you trying to force something down their throat. If they wonder why you do what you do or where you got your heart from. Like me, my heart was changed by God because I used to be a different kind of person. So I mean, if somebody asks me, say, yeah, God saved my life, and now I find joy in just helping people, but only if they ask, right? It's a whole different ballgame. Like you're saying,
and all the evangelists watching are cringing and dying because this is flies in the face of who they are. And I get that. And God bless them, right? Go do your thing. But I'm not going to do it with you. Like, I'll go do the other stuff. Like, I'm a different body part in the body of humanity here.
And I think you're hitting on, like, you know, this conversation started with me asking you specifically about specific episodes in your life that initiated this new form of theology. It is that. And I'm working with a client right now. He's a theologian. He's brilliant. And one of the things he's a proponent of is this idea of, we've always looked at everything from top down. So, you know, God's in heaven, we're always looking up. And so his philosophy, it's really beautiful. It's a grounding theology in the everyday experience. So it's looking at God and theology from the perspective of the destitute and the poor, and that changes the framework because now you are also on the same playing field. And I think traditionally, I'm African, so I know how the gospel was presented to.
Sorry, you know, sorry on behalf of everyone everywhere that was not in Africa.
And this is where, because and there's a whole set of, you know, you and I can have a 3-hour conversation about what, you know, perpetuates this mindset and this attitude. But that's not the point of what we're trying to get to, is that when you change your disposition and how you look at a person, because they're not, I think what my challenge has been is the institution has kind of taken over God. And so it's like, it's this great thinker said that, originally it was a fellowship, and then it goes through these iterations to eventually it becomes an institution, or an organization. And so this is what's happening often, is that even when a set of people are going to, rescue, save, build, whatever, they're going on behalf of an institution. And the purpose of it is that for them to come back so that they can justify the expense and the trip. Just had a conversation with a friend, and they're going to is it 1040 window? Or what?
Is that still a thing?
That's still a thing, which I didn't even know. And
it has to do with the equator.
For those that don't know.
And they're hidden and all this stuff. And I'm thinking to myself, we live in like the internet age.
What is that? The 1040 thing? What is that?
It's a part of the globe that's like the 1040. If it's
like the
latitude,
degrees or whatever.
Degrees, because most of the like unreached people
are
within that particular geographic stripe.
And there is a sense of like, when someone does that kind of work, there's a sense of like, we're going to the unreached people. And the more I think of it now, I snicker. I don't even get mad at it, because I understand the motivation and the heart behind it. But I also recognize that, listen, God is pretty massive and I don't know how big, but pretty big. And he can speak to people in their dreams. There's this mindset. I think it's more about us than it is about the people. And I know this because I've been on short-term missions, and I've taken teams. I've done it all, and outreaches. And if you
did you wear the matching t-shirt?
Oh, I probably did. I probably initiated the fundraisers. I was a raw guy, And what I learned after, a lot of these individuals that went on these, they don't even believe in God. I don't think some of them anymore. Just the journey of it. But this is the point. The point is, it was more for us than it was for the people.
Absolutely.
And
it probably did a lot of good for those who went.
And also for those, they came back and they were really transformed. It allowed them to see life from a whole different perspective. It challenged them. Their faith went to a new level. And
maybe they became more grateful for what they
had. They had experiences and so on. However, from talking to an economist and from a long-term standpoint, impact and the stuff that we don't really want to address, you could say, well, nothing's really changed because they're still in the same condition, same situation. Right. It's temporary. It's like a temporary hit that people get, and you get this, euphoria. You get the testimonies, and you get all those things. But in the end, I've asked that question: is that, are you just perpetuating this attitude? And so I think you challenging this and saying, hey, are we hurting? That's a good question.
Yeah. And I mean, you have to weigh it out sometimes. Not that I think that the ends justify the means. So I'm not saying that. But if you look at some of the institutions that we love, hospitals, schools, thank you, Catholic Church. Thank you, Jesuits. For all of the abuses that we hear about, those are very real. They were very wrong, and I am not condoning them. On the flip side, those same institutions, different people likely, maybe some of the same people, they have made inroads and done things for women's rights, human rights, for dealing with poverty. I'm not condemning people who say there's poverty, there's things in the world that I want to deal with, I'm going to go. They're burning to go. Yeah. I'm not stopping anyone from going or saying you're an idiot for going. Right. Check yourself and look at how you're going to go. But by all means, don't ignore the burning to go. If you want to deal with world poverty, we need a little bit more, and that can happen at every sphere. It can happen by running campaigns and volunteering and door knocking for candidates who are the real deal, who will make good policy for our country to make sure that we have people fed in this country. We have places that don't have clean drinking water. Ken can probably scream about this for hours. We have communities in the best country on the planet that don't have clean drinking water. Ridiculous, right? So by all means, go do something about that. scream and yell at politicians about that. Run for office. Do those things. You can do things at home. Like, love people that are unlovable around you. Like, who are the people who are sex tourists, right? From the West and from the East. There's Asians. There's all over the world. They go to different places that are sex tourist destinations.
Like Thailand is one of the ones that people is known for that, right?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And Cambodia. These are the two areas where we do a lot of work. These are not people who are just regular, everyday, normal people. Oh, they may appear to be. They're people who have a kind of depravity, right? And they have that because something's happened to them. They've been abused. They're lacking love. They've been through something. And how do you change the world? Make sure that guy that you go to school with, that guy that you work with, that person who's struggling with their self-esteem, their sexual identity, with rejection, that they have friendship, that they have those things here, then they're not seeking them out of a 6-year-old girl, like in Southeast Asia. There's a way of, like, this is the slow process, but we can have a huge impact without getting on a plane or having a car wash or having the matching t-shirt. We can love the people around us. If I was off taking care of other people in other part of the world and I neglected my parents who need more assistance at this stage in their life, who did amazing at taking care of me, I would be part of the problem, right? We have to take care of the people at hand. Like, we don't have to look further than our own household, right? Our own extended family, our parents, our community members, the neighbors, and then the people who fall through the cracks as well in our community. So there's a lot we can do here, and then find really cool people. There's a woman, Lynn Johnson, who she's an Australian. She works in Cambodia. She has an incredible model, and she elevates the people who are local, what we would call a local, right? Khmer people in Cambodia, and helps them just set up business and go forward. And they do. She does real ministry, and she's an evangelist. She can't go from place A to place B without getting like an entire tuk-tuk full of people or van load of people that end up going to Sunday school with her, right? Like, she's just like the Pied Piper of everyone, of love, right? And because she loves people, I support her, and I will if I win the lottery, I would like to hand it over to her because she does the stuff, the real thing, and she's the real thing. So find people like that. And sometimes you have to, like me, you have to spend 20 years wandering the planet, getting involved in some of these things, doing some of the wrong things, but continually trying to evolve and get better. And then you get to come across some of these other people who've also been through their journey, and then support them. Amazing. Go get a good job. Go get a paper route, and drive an Uber and make some extra money and send it their way, because they're going to change the world.
And you can always tell when somebody's really doing it from love, right? Or for ego. It's almost like instant, like just by the way, just the sound of the words, that like the two people could say the exact same thing, and you could instantly know who's doing it out of ego and who's doing it out of love, right?
Yeah. I'll tell you a funny story.
Yeah.
So there's another woman who works there through Patricia King's ministry, through there, Andrea Assen, and so she's the first person that I was involved with in Cambodia, and the ministry is now called Everlasting Love, I think. It's had a few different names, but she's been there for eons, and she took me up to Poi Phet, which is at the border between Cambodia and Thailand. And I'll tell you the night bus story another time. But when you buy a ticket, you could be like spooning with someone you don't know. Like these little. I'm not Asian sized. I'm not a small woman. So when you're in a sleeper, you know those gym mats you have, like those blue things. They're those bunk beds, like on stainless steel things on a bus at night, and you buy a ticket for like half of one. I'm like a full mat person, not a half mat. Maybe you'd be okay, Joe. Yeah, you'd be fine. But so like drunk Asian man ends up bunking with me. So I learned buy 2 tickets. It's worth the expense. This is not an upgrade to first class on an airplane. This is just like an extra $5. Yeah. When you're traveling with 3 people and the other 2, I'm the sucker that got that. So the night bus to Poi Phet is an adventure for everyone. Everyone should take this trip. But we got there, and we were at a cafe. We went in, and Andrea kind of walked us through kind of in a whisper. But someone was taking some donors through a tour. And I guess what they do in this particular place is that it's like a cafe turn hair salon, turn sewing, turn whatever. And they just keep renovating it, and they keep getting donors to donate. And then they give like their brother the contract to rip out all the thing and put a hair salon in some sinks, take a few pictures of someone. And meanwhile, then they turn it into a cafe, and then they turn into this other. I mean, I was sitting in that place, and I was like flabbergasted. But that's one like little anecdote of how people will scam donors.
Right.
And they'll take their money and they'll show them, like they'll take them on the tour, like, oh yes, you've seen it. I've seen it with my own eyes. Therefore, I feel good about giving the money.
Right.
But when you leave on your plane, they're going to tear it all down and make a sewing business out of it. And this wasn't the only place in the planet.
Wow.
This is a thing. So even where we put our money, we want to be careful about it.
Yeah.
But
this is really I think informative because it forces you to, and we talk a lot about change, coming from the inside out, and what you're speaking of is, yes, we see these external problems, and when you see somebody that is in pain and suffering, you want to go and stop and help them because that's the right thing to do. You can't ignore that.
Yeah.
But also at the same time, you have to start addressing the internal problem, which is complex, long term.
Yep.
And difficult.
Yeah.
And so it challenges me because I was that guy, one time I was like, yeah, let's just go and change the world. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. I think it was Dr. Jordan Peterson. He'd written a book.
I was waiting to drop a line about
him.
He
had 12 rules for success or something like that. And
12 rules for life.
So rule number one was, you want to change the world, make your bed.
Clean up your room. Just clean up your room, right? Clean up your room first. Yeah.
Which is so true, personal responsibility.
Yeah.
And I think what you were illustrating was, hey, get a job.
I sound like my dad all of a sudden.
Get educated. But what you're saying is that you need to have some kind of marketable, something that you can offer.
Yep.
It's great to say, hey, I'm here, I'm available. Mm-hmm. But how effective can you be if you've trained yourself, educated yourself to solve that one specific problem?
And you don't have to be an economist, and you don't have to be an IT specialist. You don't have to be an engineer that digs wells. I know people who dance, and that's their thing is to dance. Your wife, I would love to get her coming with me on these things. I'm gonna.
Yeah, she would love that.
What we do is we train people who are arts therapists already. So they've already been through it. They're dance movement therapists, they're art therapists, whatever, music therapists. And then we train them in how to take their skills that they've learned and apply it into aftercare for people who've come out of trafficking for therapeutic, but not just to get their hands on the exploited women. Like, oh, we want to see trafficked women. There are people who are like that. Like, I want my picture taken with trafficked women.
Wow.
I'm not even being funny.
That's crazy.
But what we do and why I have open doors to some of the biggest organizations in the world that do the best work on this, in my opinion, is that I've said, I know what it's like when people come in as tourists. We won't do that to you, but we would love to know what you need and what does your staff need. And so we go in and we train their staff. So they have social workers that don't have BSWs and MSWs and PSWs. They're people who may have gone through the program themselves, and they're counselors, and they may have a little bit of training, and some a little bit more than others. But we'll go in and say, we have these arts therapy, dance movement therapy techniques that you could use as part of your tool for your toolkit in helping your clients. So let us invest in you. And they get a certificate at the end. They've been through this intensive 4 or 5 day workshop. And so these aren't engineers or doctors or nurses or dentists that are going with us. They're dance movement therapists, maybe not the people, maybe their parents wish they were a doctor or a lawyer, right? Dance movement therapist. Yeah, nice. But it's amazing because those people have something that can unlock someone, right? And they can get to parts of their psyche and open up their spirit too for healing, and to really come through this traumatic experience. They don't have to walk through life crippled by trauma. And so everyone has something to offer.
Yeah.
You have to find out where it is that you should be offering it, but hone it. Be a professional at what you do. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades, but I've narrowed it down. I focused a lot, and I know I'm good at leading teams. I do that in the government. I do that in NGO world. I do that everywhere, so I use that. I can train and I can do that kind of thing. So I'll use that. I'm not a dance movement therapist. So maybe dancing is not my thing. Although I do take dance classes, I will tell you that.
There you go.
But by all means, whatever it is, if you're technically inclined, I have friends that are filmmakers and they're learning and they're honing their craft. Well, there's some stories that need to be told in an ethical way and not an exploitative way. Bring your gear. I'll put you to work, and so I think there's something to be said for that. So don't just show up with your backpack. Have a plan, and get good at something, get a job, get educated, give some money to someone who's doing the good work, but then, find out where you can get plugged into.
Yeah. And even in, I can't remember the guy, but he does a lot of well digging or something like that somewhere in Africa.
Oh yeah, that guy.
That guy.
The African well digging guy. Yeah, I know him well. That one guy.
He's a white guy.
The white well digging guy.
Getting more detailed here.
Narrowing it down.
Narrowing down. It's like,
there was a Christian rapper named Bizzle who actually
Bizzle used to do that too.
He put out an album, a project that he took all the proceeds to build. They called it Well Wishes was the album. It was like $40,000 or $50,000 that he put towards building wells actually over in Africa.
Yeah, but what I was trying, I can't remember this guy, but he's a leader of a pretty big NGO.
White guy?
White guy. Great white guy.
This is a great show.
How many white guys are out there digging wells? That's not a lot anyway.
It's probably 2 or 3.
So it's a white guy thing to do.
Hey, Bizzle's black. Come on.
If you're white, you're, what do? You're mountain climbing? Digging wells in Africa?
Yeah, that's pretty, that's good. Yeah. Tell me what he did.
Well, I don't know what he did anyways. No, he went through, he was this guy that sold tickets for like dance clubs. That was his thing.
Oh, okay.
So he raves and stuff like that. He was great. He was a brilliant marketer because he could, if it was a club that
pack the house.
Yeah, he could pack it out. He was just a really good marketer and living the lifestyle. And so because of that work, he got to know some of the, most influential people out there because they'd come to clubs and his job was to wine dine them and all that stuff, And he had a transformation. He had a real transformation, realizing, what am I doing in my life? And in that moment, he just through conversation, he found out about this organization that goes out there and starts digging wells and stuff like that. And he's thinking, I could help you guys out. Does an event because he's got a roster of the who's and who. Mm-hmm. Ends up raising thousands of dollars. And he's like, wow, this is fun. And out of that, he literally started an organization that is now helping, I don't know, millions and millions of people.
That's amazing.
And so the point is that even your, the stuff that you're currently doing that you think, so what's it for?
There's no meaning into it.
There's meaning and purpose when you attach it to something that's bigger than yourself.
Right.
And so there's a lot of talented, gifted people that have the skill, but they don't know how to match it with, purpose and meaning. And I think what you're doing is a great outlet for someone like that. And maybe tell them, if they wanted to get involved, connect with you, because I know you do a bunch of different things.
They can get in touch with me for sure. And when I do a training school through Traffic Jam, we spend the first few weeks talking about how helping hurts and basically discouraging people from getting involved. And if they're still left standing after that, this is not great marketing. Talking about someone who's great at marketing, I'm basically don't do it.
Right.
Back away.
It's actually the best kind of marketing.
Most people have screwed up the world. You colonialists, you racist, fear-mongering Bible thumpers. Get thee behind me, Christians. And if they're still left standing after week 3, then they get to keep going and they learn about all kinds of cultural things and and everything. And then by the end, no one's dropped out for those reasons that I know of. And then we do a field placement after months of this sort of online training. We do a field placement in Cambodia, Thailand, which we'll expand as well. But my vision and part of what I'm trying to incubating and putting together for taking over this NGO work is to kind of expand that vision, building a roster and a network of skills, professionals, various types of things that we can call on so that when an NGO has a need for something, the woman I was talking about, Lynn Johnson, so she has something called the Wellspring Initiative, and she has Moriana, which is a clothing design, beautiful linen clothes. And, so someone with a business background, they could be really valuable in there. Someone who knows the principles of design and sewing, they've got their handle on that part of it. But you get, someone that can come in and sort of mentor and work side by side with some of these people who've come out of human trafficking or have been vulnerable to it or out of prostitution. And this is vocational training for them, but also not just how to sew, but how to market, how to do business, how to design. People with those backgrounds, there's a place for them. I'd rather have those folks than almost anybody. People who are designers, Canadian designers, like what a great opportunity to go and work side by side with other people who have a passion for sewing and for design and clothing and fabric. The silk and the fabric in Cambodia. Wow. It's amazing. So it's a great opportunity for shoulder to shoulder sharing and mentoring and offering skills. So I mean, I can't say that I could plug everyone in, but I do like to I can direct people towards great organizations and give suggestions.
Is there a website or something that you have for them to check out?
At this point, like we're sort of undergoing a change on that, but we can maybe post my contact information.
Yeah, we'll do that on there. And if they want to connect with you. Yeah. But this has been really illuminating. We didn't even get to politics.
I know.
Which means you have to come back.
Okay.
Yeah, please, yeah.
I was meaning to have a big conversation with you because you obviously did this kind of work too. So
let's do that. Let's actually do a follow-up.
We'll do a follow-up and it'll all be politics.
Yeah,
from A to Z.
Yeah, let's do it.
Thank you so much for taking time from
thank you. It was great.
Very busy life.
Yeah, but this is fun.
This is amazing. Yeah. Well, I hope you guys got blasted and learned something. I did. I'm not going to international missions work ever again.
Because we were thinking about it, but not anymore.
Staying home.
Get a job. Stay home and get a job.
Get a job. Thank you so much. See you guys later. Brilliant. You're so good. I didn't have to do anything.
Yeah, that was amazing.